My primary musical role model, or inspiration, if you want to use that word, is definitely Edgar Varese, far and above any other influence. And I'll tell you a little story about that. I grew up in a small college town in the Midwest, and of course the college had a music department. And when I entered high school, I started studying composition with the instructor there. And when I was 16, at the end of one of our lessons, he pulled an album off his shelf and said, "Have you ever heard any music by this composer?" And I looked, and I couldn't even pronounce the name. And I said, "Well, no, I haven't." He said, "Well, take it home and bring it back next week and let me know what you think." So my exposure to music had been, my parents always took me at the end of every semester up to the college to hear the orchestra play, and it was always Beethoven, Brahms, and if they got really adventuresome, maybe Mahler. And so I was pretty familiar with all that type of music growing up. And anyway, I got home with this album, and I took it out of the sleeve, I put it on the turntable, and I lowered the stylus onto the first cut. And in 10 seconds, my jaw had dropped to the floor, and in about 30 seconds, I looked up toward where the music building was, and I waved my hand like this at it and said, "You know, those people don't know what's going on. This guy knows what's going on." And right then and there, I knew I wanted to become a composer. It was an epiphany. And so I took it back, and he said, "Well, what did you think?" And I said, "I loved it." I said, "I feel like my entire life I've been walking along in a pipe. And then when I heard that music, I stepped out into this amazing universe where just anything seemed possible." It was one of the most exciting moments in my life. So definitely Edgar Varese was and is my primary influence. My works start with something that I experience outside of music that causes in me some kind of emotional response. And my goal is to try to create music that will cause a similar emotional response in the listener. So I guess that's a very romantic notion, but that's how I do things. And then compositionally, I like to use large sonorities that are constructed of non-pitched sounds and then lay them out in time rhythmically so that I can build up tremendous amounts of energy and then release that energy, either suddenly or over a longer period of time. And then that's both in the micro and the macro sense. I like to do that with individual passages, and then I see it at the piece as a whole. How am I building up this energy and releasing it, and maybe building more and back down and then a little. And so I tend to graph things out in terms of energy levels, using the sonorities I create and the rhythm which lays them out in time. Electronics are very important to me because, as I said, I like to build non-pitched sonorities, or sonorities from non-pitched sounds. And the use of electronics allows me to do that and gain sounds that I could never get by using traditional acoustic instruments. Although almost all of the sounds that I do build start off as recordings of acoustic instruments. I used very little synthesized sound. It's recordings of acoustic instruments that provide the basis, and then all the digital manipulation you can do from there to make these sounds change in many different ways. And I try to make, hopefully, really sonorous sounds, not the dry, crackly kind of things, but definitely more open sound and more sonorous. And then that allows me to, as I said, use these sonorities to create my music.
And you perform in your own works?
I do.
Okay.
I perform my solo pieces, and I also perform as a member of the ensemble playing one of my pieces.
And how does that affect your work as a composer, do you think?
Oh, well, being a percussionist, a performing percussionist, definitely, to me, is a great benefit because I write almost exclusively for percussion and with or without electronics. And since I'm a percussion player, I've been trained as a percussion player, I know what's possible and what's not possible and what might, something that might be very difficult to play, and if you just changed a little bit, now it's easy to play, but you get the same effect. So that's worked out really well for me.
And do you have a group of musicians that you often collaborate with, either as in an ensemble or that you write for in general?
I don't really have a group of people for whom I write, but I am a member of several music groups, and sometimes we meet and we'll play the works in progress and bounce ideas around. And then some of them also run a concert series, and my pieces sometimes are on some of those concerts.
Okay. Do you want to talk about any particular pieces of your own that you might want to give just a little bit more detailed background about?
In terms of composition or in terms of its... both, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll talk about Voyager, which is my piece for one percussionist with electroacoustic playback, but that's such a long term, I still like to say tape, so it's for percussion and tape. Until we figure out what the new word is going to be, I still use percussion and tape.
Fixed media.
Yeah, I think fixed media.
Fixed media.
I prefer tape.
I like one small, short word.
That just tape. And people say, "Oh no, it's not tape."
Yeah.
I think, well, of course, we know it's not tape.
Right. But everyone knows exactly what you mean. Anyway, Voyager is the one major thing that I do with the electronics and the live performer is that they are very strictly integrated rhythmically. And there are many times where the performer may be playing running 16th notes along with the electronic part. And then the electronic part will take off doing other rhythms and the percussionist doing other rhythms, and then suddenly they're back together. So when you look at the score, when you look at the percussion part, of course it's got the regular 16th notes and 8th notes, but so does the tape part. Everything's noted out precisely when it happens and what is happening, so the performer can synchronize very well with the tape. Also, with the tape part, I like to think of it in a way as an ensemble. So Voyager, I was writing the tape part for 6 different channels, you might say, not discrete audio channels, but 6 different ideas running along. 6 different sonority types is a better explanation. And I wrote like I would for a sextet with a soloist. So my paper that I use for the draft has the 6 segments drawn out for the tape part, and then the 8th notes, 16th notes, and the crescendi and etc., all in the tape part, just like the percussion part. So it's not a matter of you push play and then the percussionist kind of improvises and floats along with the electronics. It's absolutely strictly notated and to be strictly coordinated.
And the title refers to?
The title refers to the Voyager spacecraft that NASA launched in the mid-1970s. And I remember at the time reading about this and just thinking how fantastic it was that we were going to send these 2 things to explore the outer planets of our solar system, and then when they were done with that, they would be diverted out of the planetary I can't remember the exact word for it now. The planetary plane. They'd be diverted out of that, and then travel, I guess, for billions of years through space. And they'll still be traveling long after human beings are no longer exist, and the Earth will be gone, and our sun will be just a little charred, burned-out cinder. But there, what those 2 things are, still saying, we were here, we did this. And again, it's very a romantic notion, and I hope through my program notes and through the music, I can communicate some of that feeling to the listeners. And of all the reviews that I've received, there's one sentence that really is particularly important to me. Joseph McClellan, who was the head critic of the Washington Post, wrote, "Mr. McCandless clearly places a high priority on communication as well as innovation." And that is, I felt very honored that he saw what I was trying to do and could sense it and wrote that sentence. It's meant a great deal to me. There's a gold record on it with Chuck Berry and Glenn Gould playing the Goldberg Variations. And it's interesting because that's a gold LP, So advanced enough people will be able to look at it and say, look at those lines, that's some kind of vibration. If you send a CD, they would go, what the hell is this? They'd look at a microscope and go, but that thing, it makes, analog recordings make sense to us, viscerally.
Coming back a little bit, films.
I know, the sound so much better. But anyway.
So let's talk about your upcoming plans or projects.
Sure. Right now, I'm working on a piece for 4 percussionists and tape. And it is called Canyons, which is, again, an extra musical reference. I was fortunate to be able to do a lot of hiking in the small and large canyons of the American Southwest. And my piece is coming from my experiences in those canyons and on top of those canyons. And again, I want to try to relay some of these feelings to the listener. The tape part, rather than 6 ideas as was with Voyager, this is now, I'm talking about 40 parts. So it's kind of like a really large ensemble with 4 percussionists as a concerto group. And that's proving to be more difficult than I had imagined, trying to keep track of all these 40 different ideas and sonorities going along. But I'm definitely going to get it. I know I am, so I'm going to stick with it until I've got it. And as far as upcoming performances, I'm hoping to have this piece finished in the next year or so, and then I'm a member of the New York Composers Circle, and I'll submit it to them, and hopefully it'll be chosen. So
It's 4 percussionists and tape.
4 percussionists and tape.